Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 40. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday. Steelers Nation, have a great show for you guys today, getting ready for this Week 8 game between the undefeated 6-0 Philadelphia Eagles and the 2-5 Pittsburgh Steelers. Have a great guest a little bit later in the show as well in Dave Spadero for the Eagles Insider podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Eagles Insider. But before we do that, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I get myself in a better frame of mind heading on into Thursday and, geared up start gearing up for the next week. And obviously got Thursday night football to look forward to. And, I start diving after Thursday night football is over with. I start diving even deeper into film study of the opposition, and then I start getting depressed again.
Especially when it's the Eagles.
Especially when it's the Eagles there, and you've talked yourself into maybe the Steelers turning the corner maybe on a couple of areas, maybe. And then you go look at some of these offenses and what they're doing, and it feels like the Steelers are trying to rub two sticks together to move the football down the field there. But look, I'm not complaining though overall, because we get to watch football and do it full time, and it will be interesting to see what happens on Sunday in Philadelphia against the Eagles.
And in that Thursday night game, Pittsburgh not getting much help with the Ravens beating Tampa Bay. One interesting piece of history that happened in that game, though, Tom Brady has taken a record away from Big Ben Roethlisberger, and this is a good one to take away from, to not be first place in. Tom Brady, now the most sacked quarterback in NFL history, sacked 3 times last night, so he sits at 556 for his career, Ben at 554, and so Brady broke the quote-unquote record, I believe, late in the first half of that game. So that's a lifetime achievement award, really, for Tom Brady, considering how long he's been in the NFL. But still, I guess that is a little bit of history there that was relevant to the Steelers last night. Man,
he's got to take all of Ben's. Anything out there that Ben has, he's got to. Even the negative connotation ones, he's got to take it. It'll be interesting to hear Ben talk, and he will. Ben will talk about that on his podcast. And
we know he'll talk about it on his podcast. We'll be writing about it.
Yeah, and Ben will say something along the lines of, I didn't even know that.
For sure.
And then he'll get in and talk about all the times he was sacked and all like that. So that podcast, other than them, I'm not that interested in them tasting beers and all like that and getting their thoughts on that. But when they do talk a little bit of football, and even it was a little bit different watching them kind of comment on watching that game last, when was it, Sunday night, in real time and commenting on it there. That was an interesting kind of angle on top of everything else. But you can bet Ben will be talking about Tom Brady breaking his sack record on this next show.
All right, let's talk about where the Steelers are at heading into this game against the Eagles from a health and injury report standpoint. Overall, I would call this team in pretty good shape ahead of Friday's final injury report. The only 3 players not practicing on Thursday included Levi Wallace with the shoulder. It very much seems doubtful he'll play this weekend. Larry Ogunjobi with that knee seems to be something he's going to probably just have to deal with for quite some time. And then Cam Hayward got the day off for being old. And so I think, what if Tomlin took a shot at him like last Sunday or something, called him old crusty graybeard or something like that in that interview with Bob Labriola. But it seems like Wallace is probably the only guy that has a high chance to miss in this game. Kelly Witherspoon is practicing full all week. Montravius Adams, it looks good to go. Steven Sims should return off that hamstring injury that caused him to miss the Dolphins game. And so this team, from a health standpoint, in terms of the guys on the 53, look to be in decent shape.
Yeah, I would guess that the biggest question mark, as you stated there, would be Levi Wallace. And Josh Jackson, I think, is dealing with that groin, but is moving in the right direction. So that, barring any kind of surprise on the injury report, Levi Wallace will be the one to watch this afternoon.
Now, the biggest news from the injury standpoint are the guys who have been and still are on injured reserve. We talked about on Wednesday, that was the deadline for the team to make a decision on rookie receiver Calvin Austin III, that 21-day window expiring. Either he had to be activated off of IR and put on the 53-man roster or remain on IR for the rest of his rookie season. Ultimately, it was the latter. He will be on IR for the rest of his rookie year. Jerry Dulac provided some clarification, and as you kind of talked out loud about during that Wednesday show, was there a potential setback with the injury that he had? And it seems to be the case. Dulac noting he aggravated that foot injury that he suffered back in the summer, and he'll have to undergo surgery sometime soon. So that is the explanation for why Austin was not activated off of injured reserve, but still a very disappointing year for him, just from a health standpoint.
Yeah, and when you go back again, we talked about kind of that word salad that Mike Tomlin threw out there the other day, and even after the podcast that we had there, when you start trying to parse it all, I went back and I thought, well, why does he have to check on a player that's had their 21-day window open, right? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes we try to not we see the words, we hear the words, but we don't listen to the words maybe sometimes. And I think Tomlin gave probably enough clues in there that it was probably a pipe dream to think maybe that he was going to get activated there. And at least we know why now. And I would think, and as I stated on the show the other day there, you're not going to open up the 21-day window on a guy unless you think there's a good chance that he could return, right?
Right.
So, putting two and two together here, it would lead you to believe that something has happened in the first maybe couple of weeks of him, returning back to practice with that foot that ended up causing him to get shut down again. And now, we're going to be waiting until 2023 to see. This kid hasn't even played in a preseason game. How many practices was he out there at training camp for, Alex? Like eight, 7, 8?
The first 2 weeks, right before the first preseason game, he got hurt, so I'd have to track it. But, yeah, the first 2 weeks or so he practiced.
I mean, when you talk about a guy that's, relying on speed and cutting ability and stuff like that, now, with the foot issue and surgery, the name Sinquez Golson has kind of been thrown out there now, and hoping he's not that. And it's hard not to kind of point to a situation with Sinquez Golson in this, but man, keep your fingers crossed for this kid, because they could certainly use a player in this offense with his skill set, and it is very it's very sad that we're not going to see him play any snaps during his rookie season, plain and simple.
It is disappointing, and, just should be good to go for OTAs in 2023, and you go from there and hopefully just get better health. And he's taking the mental reps, and so that'll help him a little bit, but certainly a guy that's yet to play a single game, preseason or, of course, regular season. So not the way you want to start a career. And again, as you mentioned, with, multiple or aggravation of foot injuries for a guy who's so reliant on speed, not a great sign either. But that's the story on Calvin Austin. Should mention, by the way, DeMonte Casey he got activated, designated to return last week, but I think he officially began the practice this week. So it doesn't appear that he's going to be activated for this weekend's game, probably a post-bye week guy, but should mention Casey as well. Of course, though, the big news here is with TJ Watt. He has officially been designated to return to practice. The expectation has always been, from reporting and just kind of the tea leaves of it all, is that he would come back post-bye week 10 against the Saints. But as you wrote about yesterday, and I think it makes a lot of sense, he's a Watt. I mean, could this guy actually play this Sunday against the Eagles? As you noted, Watt is scheduled to speak to the media today, which is unusual for a guy that's injured and not fully back. And frankly, I was thinking about this more last night. What's the reason not to get him in this game? I mean, if he can give you even 30, 40 snaps in this one, when you're 2-5, you're against the 6-0 Eagles, your season is effectively on the line. If he can go at all, why hold him back?
Yeah, and that's caused quite a bit of discussion now, not only on our site, but on social media platforms and all. Well, look at where the Steelers are. Don't rush him back. Just wait until after the bye week and yada, yada. And look, I mean, you even go back to what Mike Tomlin said when asked about if there's, he said there's no news. There was no new news to pass along on Watt when talking about Watt and Austin. And what did he say? Unlikely?
Inclusion was highly unlikely for him and Austin.
I mean, if you want to boil it down that way and take that for what it is, but and it is very unusual for a player to have his 21-day window open and then a few days later get activated and then wind up playing in a game. But TJ Watt is an unusual player, and and why is this more of a story now? A few players like Alex Highsmith and Chris Wormley were asked about it, and I think maybe the way Alex Highsmith worded his answer was, they're working him back. We'll see. I know that's something the trainers are talking about with him. I'm just excited to see how much he's progressed and gotten back to himself. We're excited to see him when he does return. And as I wrote up, as you just stated there too, it's there's not many times you see a guy on IR, no matter what, level they are, high profile player have a legitimate press conference. Now they'll probably talk in the locker room or whatnot and all like that to media. But I found that a bit interesting that we're supposed to hear from Watt today. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, and I'm with you in the fact that if he's cleared and he can, I wouldn't expect him to be out there and play 60 snaps and all, but sure. I also wouldn't put it past him thinking that he could probably do it either. But if you could get this guy on the field for 20 snaps in this game, and he's cleared to do so, yeah, I'll throw it back to you. Why wouldn't you?
Right. I mean, this team's desperate for a pass rush. Everyone knows the numbers on how much they've suffered without him. I mean, Alex Highsmith has gotten production, but outside of him, especially an outside linebacker, they've gotten nothing or very little from Malik Reed and playing Ryan Anderson, Jameer Jones. Again, I understand the medical component, but obviously he's medically far long enough to return to practice and practice basically fully, it seems. So it's really kind of more of a conditioning standpoint. And again, you probably have to limit him to some degree, not play him for 85% of his usual snaps whenever he's healthy pre-injury. But again, you're 2-5. My goal was always to be at least 3-5 by the bye to really have some sort of realistic path to try to climb back into this thing. Do it. If he's good to go, then play him.
I agree, and I know a lot of people listening are not going to like to hear, probably not going to like that angle of it.
Right? No, I don't know why anyone would be upset about that. I mean, again, medically, if he's good, then play the guy.
It's the protective aspect, I think, of what a lot of, and for obvious reasons, people have said this. This season's gone, man. And why would you take your best defensive player and put him out there this soon coming off of the injury? That's the pushback, I think, sure. Mainly overall. But if this guy, now look, if the doctors say, no, it's too soon, then of course, then to heck with them,
But generally on that window, whenever they get cleared to practice, that's usually they have the medical green light at that point. Otherwise, they wouldn't come back to practice at all. And so usually guys take some time because there's just so much time missed. There's a conditioning aspect. For younger guys, there's a mental aspect, the moving train whole thing. For Watt, I doubt those are going to be big issues.
I'd put him out. If they say he can go, I put him out there.
Me too.
And it'll be interesting with this build up, especially in the last kind of 48 hours. And with him speaking I'm very, shame on somebody if they don't ask him like 3 different ways if he's going to play on Sunday against the Eagles.
Oh, I'm sure he will. I don't think he'll give you a straight answer on that one. He'll just say, well, that's coach's decision.
That's why I say 3 different ways.
Sure. I get it. But again, I'm all for him playing the second that he can play. And I think he probably could suit up this weekend.
Because look, I mean, even 20-something snaps with him, especially against this offense that they're playing, he can impact it.
Yeah, I don't want Malik Reed facing Lane Johnson in this game. It's not going to go too well for the Steelers. Hasn't gone too well for the Steelers this year. Some other news, Jordan Schultz reporting that two teams have claimed that the Steelers are asking for a second-round pick for Chase Claypool. I don't want to get too bogged down in Claypool trade stuff. We've talked about that quite a bit, but that's some news there. To me, that sounds like we don't want to sell him price, because you're not going to get a second-round pick for Chase Claypool.
If you do, God bless you.
If you do, take it. I mean, do not hang up that phone if someone offers you a second-round pick.
Right. Good luck. I mean, and that's it depends on who you want to listen to in this thing. You know, I think Aditi Kinkleballer was on the radio the other day saying that she's heard that, you know, teams are just not willing to give up anything for him. And even I think was asked point blank, you know, or the most they want to give up is like a late round draft pick and all. And you might as well not sell him off for that. And especially you're not going to get what would your wide receiver group look like, you know, if you did, you know, sell him off for whatever the price right now. You're looking at Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Steven Sims, Miles Boykin, Gunnar Olszewski. I mean, what are you going to do with that? You know?
Yeah, it wouldn't look good. But you guys know my thoughts on Claypool. I just don't see the fit long term. So I would be open to offers, not for, you know, a 6th or 7th round pick, but I would probably be more interested in dealing Claypool than the Steelers seem to be. And again, I despite all the chatter, I expect this team to probably do nothing, not buy, not sell, stand pat at the deadline.
And I was thinking last night when how best to describe, if I was another team, what we would be getting in, you know, if we were to trade for a Chase Claypool. I view him now at what we've seen enough in the slot with him and all like that. I view him as a big slot player that can occasionally play the Z on the outside. When you talk about big slot players, you usually like those players to be able to go out and dig out a safety, as the old Richard Mann used to say as well, too. One of the best quotes that I like. I remember from the time with Richard Mann with the Steelers there. Chase Claypool's not that guy that's going to help you that much in the running game from a run blocking situation. He's not a guy that's going to give you that dig out the safety component on top of it. He's not uber twitchy and all like that. So to me, he's kind of a 30 to 40 snap big slot player, maybe at best, I think.
Right, and that's why I struggle. I mean, he is the 3rd best receiver on his own team, probably the 4th best passing option behind tight end Pat Freiermuth. I mean, if you had to just take a guess at where he would rank league-wide across all receivers, is he even a top 50 guy? I'm not even sure I put him top 50 right now.
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely tough to, especially with what we've seen. So, you know, because of that, not seeing that contested catch component, right?
Right. I mean, he's a talented guy. I mean, the height, weight, speed on paper, it looks good, and the guy can make plays. I don't want to say that he's, you know, a total non-asset, but I'm just thinking about, you know, where he fits and his role and where he kind of slots in. And I don't really see how you could possibly, you know, be an opposing team that sends a 2nd-round pick for Chase Claypool, who's been frustrating and inconsistent and just struggled to find a home in terms of what his role is going to be with the Steelers offense.
And look, I mean, I'll leave it at this. I said on the Terrible Take the other, you know, couple episodes again. I mean, I just hope that if they do deal him, they get at least a 3rd, and we'll see from there. I mean, but this chatter's not going away. Is it just? No. Is it just chatter, idle chatter, or are people really hearing things?
I mean, I think there's probably some smoke there. I think there's some interest in the receiver market in general. You hear about guys like Brandon Cooks and some of the Jets guys. Are they available? Teams poking around. I mean, I understand from the reporting, you know, if you're Pittsburgh, you always want to start high, ask for that second. So if the report is they would want a second, then what would they actually take? The 4th, a 3rd, and what would they compromise to? You always want to start high in that potential negotiation. So you just kind of think about, they probably would. Are they really firm at a 2nd, or is that trying to mark a starting point that they would work themselves down from if they got a 3rd or 4th round pick? That's one thing I wonder.
Yeah, posturing. Yeah.
But anyway, I don't think anything's going to happen there. All right, let's move over to the coordinator corner on Thursday, as they always do. Matt Canada and Teryl Austin speaking to reporters. Canada, at this point, I mean, anything that you can't ask him really has been asked, and the answers aren't too much different. So anything that really jumped to mind, Dave?
There was one aspect that did kind of, and look, this guy knows this guy knows what's out there and what people think of him at this point, and he really said as much, and just tries to ignore it as best he can and all. But the whole thing about, I don't know why it is, the main takeaway that I keep going back to what he did say was that one penalty that they had there with the what was it, illegal shift, illegal motion and all like that, and his response to that didn't really sit well with me. And I'm trying to find, do you have that quote in front of you here?
I can pull it up, the part that I wrote up at least. Yeah, because when I was watching that one at the wedding, the sound was off, so I wasn't really even sure what had happened on that play. I don't have the whole quote here, but he says, Canada does quote, "I feel real strong it'll never happen again. Kenny's here for the next 15 years. I bet that never happens again. That's a crappy lesson we've got to deal with, but it's life." That was referring to Pickett. I guess it was sending Boykin in motion as that right side was still getting set, and I believe that's what drew the penalty.
I just didn't like the tone of, well, that's just something that got called or out of the rarity and it won't happen again. I would have much rather heard a response more like, we need to analyze that and make sure it's not going to happen again. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't take much issue. I think it was just Canada saying just unfortunate moment, and I think whenever he says it won't happen again, that's the implication that we'll make sure it gets taken care of.
And unfortunately, because the Steelers no longer put out these videos, we're lacking the real context and everything that goes along with that. Just reading it off of a transcript, But that was one of the things I think that jumped out at me. We got we got to score more points. Obviously asked about, he thinks his offense is close, splash plays, and, him talking about early in that game, they took, and they did try to take a couple of shots early in that game. The second play, and I think it was the fifth play. The second play was and talking specifically about kind of press type situations there. The first shot was down the left side to Deontay Johnson, and Canada says there was miscommunication of some sort on that part. He didn't get into specifics there. And then obviously the second shot was the Chase Claypool one on the slot fade. And that's the play that he got his feet tangled and all like that. And, he went on to say about different coverages and, with them playing off and not having that many man situations or press kind of situations that you got to pick your shots in there. But, look, don't tell me about the labor pain. Show me the baby. And this team it's been a thing. It's been a theme all season. They struggle to get explosive plays. If you indeed are limited in the amount of shots that you can take down the field because of how they're playing off in some instances, then you've got to figure out a better way to catch short and run long. And if you just look at the overall completed routes that this team has this year, even the majority of kind of the scheme, there's not the run after the catch situations in a lot of these completions here. And that's why they're toward the bottom of the league in yards after the catch. And then, because they're playing the Eagles this week, you look at what they do, and man, the yards after the catch that they have, even their tight ends, is just off the charts there. So you can't run. You don't have shot plays. You don't have run after the catch situations. All three of those things together make it seem like you have 6 issues instead of 3.
I thought it was really interesting to go off that point, the tweet that you had the other day about the top 5 completed routes Pittsburgh's had this year. This information comes courtesy of Sports Information Solutions. Top 5 completed routes this year. Curl 39, out 24, flat 20, screen 13, comeback 11. As you mentioned, everything outside, little yak opportunity, and that's reflected in the team's numbers. You look at the, on pace for yak for Deontay Johnson, for Chase Claypool, for George Pickens. It's 150, 128 yards. Not a lot, a far cry from what they did last year. So that number really sums up where this offense has been. It's been outside the numbers. It's been at the sideline without really any chance for those guys to make plays after the catch.
I mean, you hate to stat scout, but I mean, being as we have watched the tape.
Yeah, it matches the eye.
I mean, it does it. I mean, I don't know if you were surprised to see those numbers as much as you were to actually see those numbers in print, right?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see them. I mean, you look at how many sprint outs they've had this year and their RPO game, the little bit they do is on the outside. Do you have the number on how many slants they've completed? 5?
5.
What was it last year? I know I'm asking a bunch of questions, but I mean, it was a pretty large component of the offense, especially in the RPO game last year.
If you can keep talking, I'll pull them up here for you. I need to log in here. But and then you look at, I don't have it in front of me, what the
Okay, well, I'm assuming it was a lot more than 5. It was probably 40. I don't know what the number was last year. I mean, over the course of the entire season, but it was probably a really high number. And again, the curl routes, I mean, that's, again, some of that sprint out type stuff. You get the comeback route. That's some of the sight adjustments that they'll do occasionally, some of the back shoulder type throws, the out routes. Again, we talk about the lack of yak for this team. If you're going to get big plays 2 ways, either by, air yards, by throwing the ball downfield, which this team has not done effectively, not done efficiently, or you're going to do it through run after opportunities. And this team is not scheming up those chances overall. And so that's reflected in, you're not going to get too many yak opportunities on a curl or an out route or to the flat or a comeback. So the numbers really kind of match the overall eye test. And one of the big frustrations of this offense and why they're the least big play offense in football.
Alex, at your age, we got to keep your memory sharp because, using me as an example here, when you get my age, you want to have as sharp as a memory as I do here. So I always need to try to be testing your memory here. If you had to guess how many completed slants the Steelers had in 2021, throw out your best guess here.
I just mentioned it. I'm trying to think about over the course of, I guess, of a full 17-game season. So maybe I shot low. I'll slightly adjust and say just 47. No idea if that's even close. Though.
What's the Price is Right? You went over the.
I went over. Oh man, I should have went $1. $1 on the slants.
30 of them.
30 of them. Well, it's still. I mean, they're on pace for not even 30 this year.
Let's see what they went through. When was their bye last year?
I don't know, midway through the year. They're on pace for this year 12 completed slants, by the way. So
let's see here. Through at least week 7, looks like they had 13 completed slants.
Okay, so still 8 more. And even just conceptually, I mean, the number of slants they run this year feels less than where it was last year. And again, some of that's the lack of their RPO game's been a lot more horizontal, a lot more outside the numbers than where it was last year with Ben.
Let me real quick tell you who leads the league or give you some context and the people some context here of kind of where they sit in this here. The Bengals lead the NFL in completed slant routes at 21. Probably not a surprise. The Dolphins are second with 19. The Packers with 17. The Eagles with 14. The Bills with 14. And the Steelers, as I mentioned, at 5 are down, as you can imagine, down near the bottom third of the league. The Bears have just 2 completed slants. They've attempted, and the Steelers have attempted 9 slants in total.
They've only attempted 9.
9.
God.
That's target slants.
Targets. Okay.
Right. It's not
still.
You throw that number out there and people say, well, they never run slants. Well, they don't run a lot of slants, but these are targeted. This is where the player targeted on the field ran a slant.
How many targets did they have last year? Of the 30 completions, how many were targeted?
A lot more than that. Hold on here real quick.
And that was probably getting closer to 50, I'd guess, probably 45, 43, 40.
It would be, hold on tight here. Where is it?
Just compare that to the 9 this year, which would put them on pace for roughly, 20, we'll call it. Just over 1 per game.
Okay, here it is. 57 attempts.
Oh, wow.
Last year at a slant, and they completed 30 of them.
Not a great percentage on that slant, I guess. That's a 52% of slants completed, but in terms of targets. But anyway, yeah, a lot more last year than this year. That much is obvious, and that the data reflects that.
Right. And once again, the Eagles do a much better job when you look at what they do. They're a lot of it, screens are in their top. Screen attempts are in their top, I think, 3 completed routes for 2022. So they're doing a lot more. That goes back to, we went down a rabbit hole, and I don't mind going down those kind of rabbit holes. I love them. But we're back to talking about yards after the catch here, and they do a great job overall of putting their. Now look, they're not huge on the vertical shots. The Eagles aren't, but they don't have to be, because they do such a good job of staying ahead of the chains and putting their positions, and their yards after the catch is just tremendous this year. And it really dwarfs what the Steelers have been able to do yards after the catch here. And, going back to, people say, I forgot how we got on this on Twitter on the conversation there about something about deep shots and yards. Anyway, the Steelers are second in the NFL right now, Alex, in pass attempts of 20 yards or longer down the field. Second, okay? Now, they obviously aren't completing a good chunk of them there. And so once again, it boils back to what we said just a little while ago there. You're not completing deep shots down the field for whatever reason. You're not able to run the football, and the rest of your passing game is all pretty much individually based routes, concepts. And those route concepts, when completed, are not putting your players in position to get yards after the catch. It's 3 problems, but it feels like 6.
Right. I mean, it just kind of magnifies and sums up where this offense is at. I think with the yak stuff, it really comes up the most with Deontay Johnson, because he should be your top yak threat. What he does after the catch is one of the best parts of his game. Last year, 527 yards a yak. This year, 53. I believe he's on pace for 128 this season. So that's just, to me, a criminal misuse of Johnson and how he wins as a receiver.
You're right. You would be exactly right. I was going to pull you up if I can get back to it real quick. The overall, what kind of yak a guy like Deontay Johnson has here.
Yeah, is there a place to find Team Yak? I don't see it on PFR. I want to see where Pittsburgh ranks league-wide. I assume it's very much at or near the bottom, but I just want to see where their overall Team Yak stacks up, and I can't find a quick and easy place to pull that data up.
I think ESPN actually has some stuff on that. Overall, let me see. I know SIS has it here.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I thought PFR might have that. They have it just for individual players. I wish they would have that for the team. But Pittsburgh, I'd be shocked if they weren't anything better than 31st and probably 32nd.
Well, their overall yak number is 588 yards, and there are 4 teams with fewer yards after the catch than they have. The Cowboys, the Titans, the Bears, and the Falcons. Oh my. But I mean, when you look to it, when you boil it down, what's 588 divided by 165, because that's the amount of receptions I think they have there.
That's true. Yeah, 3.56, you call it.
That's not great, Bob, right?
Not great at all.
And when you look at the Falcons might have let's see, the Falcons have only 92 receptions, but they have 470 yards. So even their yards after the catch average is better than the Steelers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 5.1. So that's true. On an average standpoint, per reception standpoint, Pittsburgh is lower than the overall number may indicate. And the overall number is not good to begin with. You're still 29th or whatever that is.
Right.
So I think we've well established that, but I'd rather discuss that than Matt Canada just give the same old talking points. And I'm not mad at Canada for saying that. What else is he going to say? It doesn't matter what you say, whether you give the best explanation possible or the worst, most basic explanation possible. The results are really all that matters. And so I'm not mad at Canada for saying the basic stuff like got to get better, all that stuff, got to score more points, of course, but you can say whatever you want. It's all comes down to what you actually do on Sundays.
I mean, and the way this offense with the individual, a lot of the individual concepts and all like that. I mean, there's not room for execution errors. There's not room for penalties. The least little pebble in the road can throw this whole thing off, And
right now they're just a big boulder that's been sitting there. They're just driving into. They feel like the scene in Austin Powers where he's trying to get out of that narrow hallway, and they're just slowly backing up and going forward and backing up. And it may be progress. Matt Canada may be right; it's progress, but it is painful to watch.
And you showed this past week too some of the. And that's why I said at the top of the show, you watch these little parts, you say, okay, that's getting better there, getting better. Then you go and watch somebody else's tape and you think, but I mean, their pin and pull kind of concepts this last week weren't bad. Getting Najee on the edge there, but even then, we're saying, oh man, thank God they got a 17-yard run.
Right, that one time, right, and that was their G lead play with Daniels, the frontside guard, pulling. And yeah, I was just trying to find something there. I mean, the run game should not be absolved from the issues. They've tried to run a lot of different schemes and nothing's really found consistency. There really is no identity in terms of who they are as a rushing attack. And I think having a strong run game is largely about identity. And if you don't have that, I think it's really hard to have a consistent, stable, and successful run game if you really don't know who you are and what core concepts you use to win with. And I don't think Pittsburgh's found that on the ground game.
Man, just it goes back in general. What can you define as their identity? When you look at the Eagles, they're an RPO based team. That's their run game. Everything builds off of their success of the run game. That, you see that, the stats bear it out in that. You just, you look. I ended last. Don't go to bed before watching, or don't go to bed after watching Steelers offensive all 22 tape. It's not healthy.
Keep you up at night for sure. So that's Canada. That's the offense. A lot has been said before, but we'll say it one more time. Teryl Austin speaking again, not a lot from him. Talked about why they haven't blitzed maybe quite as much as people thought they would without TJ Watt. Talked about some of the injuries to the secondary. I get that. I know they've tried to do a lot of different things, and in certain games they have been more blitz heavy. They blitz 62.5% of the time against the Bills, so it really just depends on game plan. I do feel like overall they probably haven't blitzed enough to compensate for the lack of pressure the front four has been getting post TJ Watt.
Yeah, that's fair. But within that, look, I mean, the Bills game was a disaster defensively, but they are trying to adjust, and they are at least in the first. First half against the Dolphins and maybe the next drive against the Dolphins in the second half weren't what you'd like it to be, but they still managed to make key plays and key moments. They're keeping the score down generally on a week to week basis.
Sure.
There, I mean, it's not perfect, but at least you see things. Disguising the coverages. They're doing a lot better job, I think, this year at disguising what they're trying to get done on the back end there. They're mixing up, cover 3 and some cover 2. And, they're putting themselves like against the Dolphins. They were in position to have 4 interceptions in that game. And that's not all because of what they did. Tua obviously helped in that, but they're in situations where they can make some plays and they're not, they obviously didn't, they're not making enough plays to overcompensate what's not happening on offense there. And it just goes back to, again, that your game plan, your offensive game plan every week can't be what can the defense do for us.
Sure. No, I understand. And I give the defensive coaching staff credit. They have done everything they can think of, and they've added so many wrinkles on a weekly basis to try to add something new for the opposing offense to chew on, and they're trying to compensate for the lack of TJ Watt. Listen, I chart this defense. I've never had to take so much time and so much just careful, searching whenever I chart this thing. Usually, even when it comes down to, for example, what type of defense they're in, 3-4, nickel, whatever, I usually can fly through that pretty quickly, just glancing, because I know what kind of how it goes. This year, I've had to really stop and think because there have been so many variations. But just in the specific criticism and critique of the lack of pressure, I think some of that is on more of the front office for not giving them enough personnel when your depth behind Watt and Highsmith was so weak. That, I think, was probably just the mistake at the top. But I just think overall they still had a lack of pressure. And for a defense that has been all about pressure and centered around getting to the quarterback the last 5 years, 50-plus sacks, to lose Watt, which, of course, is a massive loss, and you wouldn't expect this defense to not miss a beat without him, but to still go from top pressure unit to one of the worst pressure units in football, that's just unacceptable.
Right, and it is mostly a depth component to this, right? Now, as is, since they lost Watt, I know people aren't going to want to hear this, but I think they've done an admirable job with what they have to work with on the defensive side of football. Obviously, the Bills game was a disaster. But other than that, if you want something to kind of praise this team with them going 5 in their last 6 games, it's the fact that they've been able to work with what they have.
Right, but in terms of getting pressure, they've not found a good solution to do that post TJ Watt.
Right.
That's the point.
And they're not until TJ Watt comes back.
It's actually, but to your point, it's kind of impressive that defense has kind of held things down despite really not getting to the.
That's what I'm trying to say. Is for what they've had to work with overall, and what the changes that they're trying to make on a weekly basis. I don't want to sit here and say you get an A+, but I mean, I think it's been an admirable job with what they have to work with over the course of these last 6 games.
Austin also spoke about how the Eagles offense is structured, sort of similar to what the Dolphins do in terms of their RPO game, of course, a really mobile, athletic quarterback and Jalen Hurts. And so it'll be interesting to see if Pittsburgh can and how they apply what they took from the Miami game, especially the adjustments they made against Miami, and how that gets applied to the Eagles game.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I do think, and we'll talk about that more in a second, I think the offenses are structured a bit differently, where the Dolphins seem to be a bit more of that middle of the field type team. And the Eagles probably a bit more horizontal, outside the numbers type of team was kind of my feel of just watching both teams through.
Say it again.
I think the Dolphins are a bit more of the between the numbers type of team, middle of the field type team, and the Eagles are a bit more out to the numbers, horizontal, swing passes, screens, flare outs, stuff like that.
Yeah, look, and it shows in their top routes as well too. With the but here's the thing. Once again, you look at their screen game. You look at they'll flare out. They'll give you that RPO look, and they'll two receivers on one side. A lot of times you'll see the tight end and who's the little receiver over there, Devontae Smith. And then they'll roll their quarterback out to that side, and one of those two, it seems like one of those two routes is always open for him, and it always becomes a run after the catch situation here. Once again, they don't do a lot of stuff vertically, obviously not between the numbers. You don't see a lot of that, but even let's say, 6 yards in from the numbers on both sides of the field, that area of the field, at least not more than 10 yards down the field. But what they do though, is in the shorter passing game, they do utilize those shorter slants more, and they do utilize their screen game more. And it just becomes a lot, and, they'll run the tight ends over and stuff like that in the passing game. But they're running after the catch situations with the completions are a lot higher than any single game the Steelers have done this season for sure.
Right, for sure. So I think it's a good time, since we're talking Eagles, Dave, to take a pause here and now talk to Dave Spadero, who writes for part of the Eagles Insider podcast. You can and should follow him on Twitter at Eagles Insider. So we'll come back with Dave here and talk Eagles.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday, and that means we have a beat writer or an insider who covers the opposition for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. It is week 8. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to Philadelphia to take on the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. And that means that we are pleased to have back on the show once again Dave Spadero. Dave is a insider for PhiladelphiaEagles.com. Man, it doesn't suck to be him going to work right now. Gets to spend some time with obviously some great minds over there. Fran Duffy, Greg Cosell. Man, we get to watch football for a living as well too, Dave. But I don't know. Right now, I think you got it better than we do. So welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Well, it's my pleasure to be back with you guys. Hope everything's going well and looking forward to a great game on Sunday.
Yeah, look, we're hoping it's a great game on Sunday, the way the Steelers have been playing. First and foremost, Dave, I wanted to get at the top here, and it's kind of a rewind, if you will. Andy Weidel comes over to the Steelers as the assistant general manager. You know a lot about him with him coming out of that Eagles organization. Let's start there. And we've researched and written and talked about it, but you know him on that side of the fence there. Can you tell us your thoughts on Andy Weidel and his fit with the Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, he's been very intricate and integral in putting this together, this roster together. So he believes in building from the lines of scrimmage out, and I've always respected Andy. He's a grinder. He's got a great eye for talent and understands part of a Super Bowl team. It's not just talent; it's character. It's how the fit is. It's having a great relationship with your coaching staff to make sure that you're getting the kinds of players who have the skill set to fit in that scheme. So I think you're in very good hands with Andy Weidel. And when he has an opportunity to make his mark, and it's been limited to this point, I understand, coming in after the draft, I think the Steelers will benefit very greatly from having Andy Weidel there. Again, not going to be flashy, going to be very meat and potatoes kind of building, and that's kind of the way you do it in the NFL.
When you look at this Eagles team, obviously very impressive right now, undefeated and coming off of a bye at that right now. Nick Sirianni in his second year. How would you encapsulate what 1 or 2 or 3 words would you put on that best kind of sums up why the Eagles are 6-0 right now?
Line of scrimmage. The Eagles win at the line of scrimmage, and the offensive line is outstanding. The defensive line has obviously gotten a boost this week with Robert Quinn coming in, but has been playing very well. Deep, young mix of players who've got some experience, and then bringing in Jordan Davis in the first round of the draft, a big help. And so I would say it that way. I mean, that's where it is, and then so the Eagles had that in place. They've surrounded quarterback Jalen Hurts with a lot of weapons, but it all starts with having a great offensive line that has allowed them to beat teams in a variety of ways. And we've seen the last couple of weeks when the Eagles have played in Arizona, tight game. They had to control the football and go down the field and in a tie game. And they did that with the running game, running behind a strong offensive line. And then against the Dallas Cowboys a couple of Sundays ago, Eagles are holding a slim lead in the fourth quarter, and they drive the length of the field and finish it off with a couple of passes. But they really relied on the offensive line to make that thing work and to get that running game going. And that's become the bread and butter of this offense, is a very powerful running game.
And you mentioned the offensive line, a lot of kind of recognizable names. Kelsey, obviously, a center boy. What a character that guy is, and obviously a good football player too. Landon Dickerson out of Alabama is a guy that if not for kind of the injury situation with him, I really thought the Steelers were going to be interested in him as the first round draft pick that year. Obviously didn't happen there. And he, I think it took him last season to kind of, get over some of those injuries, come into his own. But how has Landon Dickerson been playing overall?
I think he's been playing really well, and he's a big, powerful guy. And he and Jordan Mailata on the left side of the Eagles' offensive line, that is just massive, two massive human beings who are freak athletes as well. So Landon, as you said, he started his college career at Florida State, then went to Alabama, had some injuries along the way, including an ACL late in his final season at Alabama. I think everybody kind of thought that he was going to be a redshirt in his first year in the NFL, and then boom, week 2, he's out there. Brandon Brooks gets hurt. And so Landon got better without any reps at all, and nothing in training camp, nothing in preseason. All of a sudden, he's out on the field. He's a foundational piece. I mean, if he can stay healthy, he has a chance to be one of the best offensive linemen at his position in this league. Jordan Mailata, the Eagles find him in the 7th round of the draft in 2018. I mean, out of Australia, had never played football, goes to Florida, develops. The Eagles love his athletic ability. Took him a couple of years to get healthy and kind of get used to the physical nature of football. But now he's got a long-term contract, and he's, again, another up-and-coming star on the offensive line. So you team those two, pardon me, with Jason Kelsey, with Lane Johnson, with Isaac Seumalo, players who've been part of a Super Bowl team who played together for years. I mean, you really have the makings of what the Eagles have. And that's what I think. I haven't seen anything better. The best offensive line in football. And all I read about, guys, is this team has offensive line problems. That team has offensive line problems. That's the strength of this football team. And they're riding on this O-line.
By the way, you can follow Dave on Twitter at Eagles Insider. I normally put that up at the top there, but failed to. Alex, go ahead.
Dave, Eagles had a busy draft night trading for wide receiver A.J. Brown. He's having a really strong year, downfield threat, making big plays. What has he done to take this offense to a new level?
Yeah, Alex, and that's actually what he's done. That he has taken his Eagles offense to a new level. Pretty good offense last year, led the league in running. Devontae Smith, outstanding young receiver. But the Eagles needed that next piece, and getting a big, physical, thick, muscled, animal, just a beast on the field. That's what A.J. Brown is. And he's given Jalen Hurts a great weapon who can take a short pass and just violently break through would-be tacklers for big gains. Somebody who's got great hands, who's very tough, who complements Devontae Smith. I mean, every week I go into a game and I say, how is a defense going to cover both Smith and Brown? Who's your number one? Who are you going to devote your time to? And by the way, there's a really great tight end here, Dallas Goedert. But A.J. Brown, he's just he was in a bad situation, I guess, in Tennessee. They didn't want to pay him. They wanted the draft pick. So the Eagles have those extra assets in the NFL draft. They had, at that point, had 3 first-round earlier, have 3 first-round draft picks, traded 1 to New Orleans for future picks. Had 2 going into draft night, night 1. They trade the 1 to move up to they make another trade. They move up to get Jordan Davis. Then they trade that 1 to get to the Titans to get A.J. Brown. And he has been from the minute he was on the field in training camp. I mean, he just made play after play after play. He's just an outstanding wide receiver who, again, you've got the shiftiness, the great route running, the speed of Devontae Smith. You've got the power, the precision, and a player who can beat you deep as well in A.J. Brown. Maybe one of the more underrated receivers in the league, but certainly the Eagles value him greatly. He has been a huge part of things.
I think that's totally fair. I really wanted to ask you, this is a strange question, and I don't know if there's going to be an answer to this, but just doing some research on the Eagles, they have scored 112 points in the second quarter. That's number 1 in football. They're the 26th ranked offense in first quarter points, 25th in the third quarter, 29th in the fourth quarter. They're the number 1 offense in the second quarter. What is it about that second quarter that apparently makes the Eagles who they are?
Great question. I don't know. What the Eagles have been talking about is, why aren't we playing this way for 4 quarters? Of course, right. Nobody's going to be that prolific over the course of 4 quarters, but yeah, it takes them a minute to settle in. And generally what's happened is, on their second or third possession, they've kind of gone on these long, time-consuming drives that bleed into the second quarter. And then when they finally get on the board, then everything just falls into place. Once the Eagles establish the run game, they're very, very difficult to defend because the play-action game works. You have to factor in how you're going to play Jalen Hurts. The passing game creates great mismatches. If you want to go heavy in the box to stop the run, again, it's really tough to match up against Brown, Smith, and Goddard. If you're going to go light in the box, the Eagles are going to pound you to death. And so they've found a really great formula. Their hope is that it happens earlier in games. And then really where the Eagles have struggled offensively to be consistent is in the second half of games. So they're still trying to put it all together. In the meantime, they're 6-0 and, really one of the top scoring teams in the NFL. There's a lot of upside, even with a 6-0 team, knowing they have not played their best game.
Right, that's a scary thought for the Steelers this week. And wanted, of course, to ask you about the trade for Robert Quinn, sending a fourth-round pick to Chicago to add to an already deep and talented and athletic Eagles defensive line. How much do you think Quinn plays this weekend, and what's his fit in that scheme?
Yeah, I would think he'll play, 25, 30 snaps, and he'll play on the right side of the defensive line against, the left side of the Steelers' offensive line. And, he wins with speed off the edge. He's got a great bend. He's obviously very accomplished. He works into a rotation that includes Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat with their hands down. And they also have Hassan Reddick, who they signed at free agency, who's got 4.5 sacks, including 3 strip sacks. So the Eagles will come at you with a lot of weapons in the pass rush game. And getting Quinn was really important. The Eagles lost Derek Barnett in the first week of the season. Their goal is to rotate. And while Barnett wasn't particularly a prolific sack kind of guy, he was tough, gave the Eagles really good reps, and they've been looking to replace that. So to get Quinn at the price of a 4th-round draft pick for next year, a really great move for the Eagles. They've been doing it all season. They've remade the defense, and Quinn just adds to it on the front end.
Dave, you look at this RPO heavy offense, and for those that know what they're looking at there and can recognize it, it's not overly complex. But the pieces that they have in there on tape, I mean, you see even they'll pull the guard and the tackle at the same time. From the same side, you'll see that multiple times in this game as well too. And just does the threat of Jalen Hurts and his ability to read that, because you watch it on tape and you think, man, 5 yards, almost, every down, whether they throw or pass, because they only have, I think, 22 explosive plays on the season. I know they played one less game, but that's not a lot of explosive plays. So they're not having to take a lot of deep shots downfield. I guess the question is Jalen Hurts and his mobility and his ability to read that, is he the one that makes that thing so dangerous to defend, along obviously with the offensive line?
For sure. And you have to account for Jalen, and you have to keep your backside honest. So you really can't commit. And he just reads it really well. He's very consistent. He's a very intelligent player. Ball security has been terrific. And, the way the Eagles calculate explosive plays, it's 16+ yard passing plays, 10+ yards run plays. And they feel like their numbers have been really, really high. So, and last year led the league in explosive plays. So, they are not just a, grind it out kind of offense. They have been explosive, not in the realm of 40-yard runs. I get it. But certainly getting to the second level, getting to the third level. And it is all about Jalen Hurts. And, Jalen's development this year has been really significant. For the first time since high school, he has the same offensive coordinator / play caller for a second straight season.
Wow.
So think about that. He's learning a new language. He takes French one year. Well, next year we got to take German. Oh, next year we got to take Italian. So this has made a big difference. It's been a big jump in the offense, big jump in his development, big jump in his development as a pocket quarterback. But yeah, in the run game, accounting for designed runs, accounting for RPOs, that's a lot for a defense to handle when you don't see it very much.
And you watch a couple of games on the All-22 and you kind of wonder, where is the kryptonite here? And the best thing I could kind of come up with in general is do your best to stop that run on the early downs, get Jalen in, maybe a 3rd and 7, a must pass situation, and hope he kind of makes a mistake with a football. I think even a couple times against the Cowboys, there were a couple of throws maybe that maybe should have been picked off, and I don't think the Cowboys took advantage of those. Is the kryptonite the Eagles themselves making mistakes?
The kryptonite has not been turnovers, and not that kind of mistake. The kryptonite is it's hard to pinpoint. Like,
it is.
They why does this offense bog down? Their penalties are down. It's just a lack of execution. I don't know. Maybe they take the foot off the gas. They've been able to create such big leads in the first half of games. Teams make adjustments. I don't know that it'll be interesting to see. So, they spent the week by week, self-scouting. They're looking for, why are we not playing with consistency? What's happening in the second half of games? I'm interested to see Sunday what they do from a schematic standpoint to keep this thing on a more consistent pace rather than this crazy outburst in the second quarter and then dormant offense. And then, hey, if we need it late in the game, let's run the football, let's pound it, and let's win the game. That's what they've done these last 2 weeks, again, against Arizona and against Dallas. So I don't know. If I had that answer, guys, I wouldn't be interviewing with you. I'd be upstairs in the coaching room telling them what is. But that's the crazy part. It's just not that easy to pinpoint why why there's that inconsistency in the second half of games.
Dallas, Mike Tomlin praised the tight ends, called the tight end group awesome during his press conference the other day. Dallas Goedert obviously having a nice season. I know they don't use Calcaterra or Stoll that much in the passing game, but when they do, there've been some explosive plays there. And yards after the catch, man. I mean, this Eagles team in yards after the catch is just absolutely incredible. On third down, however, they don't use those tight ends too much in the passing game, do they?
No, not well. They'll use Goddard, and they will run 13 personnel. So that's usually run personnel. But yeah, they can come at you in a lot of different ways, and they have to be a bit better on third downs, offensively, more consistent offensively. But look, I don't know if many people around the league take note of Dallas Goedert. He doesn't get all the recognition of some of the other tight ends in the NFL, but he is a matchup nightmare. They'll move him around the formation. He is big, he's strong, he's got huge yak numbers. Again, Eagles had the bye week, so it's not as apparent, but prior to the bye week, he was like third in the league or second in the league in yards after the catch among every player, running backs, wide receivers. So they'll go after you with the tight ends. If they feel like there's a good matchup, they'll go after you. And if the strength of your team is your linebacker or your safety covering the tight end, well, you better have two good cornerbacks, because it could be A.J. Brown getting 15 targets or Devontae Smith getting 11 targets, or them running the football with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell 50 times a game. So this is an offense that puts a lot of stress on defenses, and there just hasn't been a defense yet, as good as the Cowboys were, and certainly the Eagles were aided by takeaways, and that's the other part of it. The defense has taken the football away 14 times to lead the NFL. It is just a very, very difficult defense, very difficult offense to hold down for 4 quarters. Nobody's done it yet.
Goddard took that Cowboys defensive back to the parking lot the other. I think in that game, who was it? The other tight end, I think, caught a pass there. I think that was Goddard.
Yeah, Stoll.
Right? Yeah. Stoll. What a play there. Alex, go ahead and a couple of defensive questions here, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Georgia well represented in the draft class for the Eagles this year. Jordan Davis at the top. Wanted to ask you about Nakobe Dean in the third round, a guy that I think, slipped maybe a bit because of some perceived medical issues. No, he really hasn't played much this year. Is that because, and it seems like TJ Edwards, Kaiser White have been playing really well for all the attention that the D-line gets, that the secondary gets. It feels like those guys in the middle, White and Edwards, have played well. Is that the reason why Dean has not seen the field?
The Eagles are really high on Nakobe Dean. He's played extremely well on special teams. He when his time comes, he will be ready. But one of the things the Eagles, they've put together, they've remade the defense, and they did it by in free agency, going out and signing Hassan Reddick and Kaiser White, who was kind of a second week free agent, 1-year deal, kind of slipped through the cracks a bit. last year led the Chargers in tackles, has been the perfect fit as the off-ball linebacker. And he's the reason that Nakobe's not playing. And then the Eagles go out and post-draft, and in the draft, of course, they get Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean. And post-draft, they sign James Bradbury, who the Giants somehow let go. And then they trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson just before the season starts. And then, of course, made the move the other day with the Bears. So, but Kaiser White is really good. And he's the only reason that Nakobe Dean is not playing. And so Dean gets a chance to, and he talks about it all the time when he's asked, prepares as if he's going to play every snap, prepares as if he's going to be the starter. So when his time comes, he'll be ready to go.
My last question for you, Dave, then I'll let Dave Bryan finish things out. I never thought I would be so intrigued watching quarterback sneaks. Then I turn on these Eagles tape, and they just do a lot of cool stuff with the pushers. So I know it's become pretty popular around the league. They even had against, I think it was Arizona or Dallas, a victory formation quarterback sneak on 2nd and 2. Is there a brainchild behind some of that stuff? Was that a Sirianni thing? I mean, where did that stuff kind of come from, and how they? Because it feels like it's a big component of their offense.
Yeah, well, it helps when your quarterback can squat 600 pounds or something. I mean,
that does.
Jalen does have a ton of leg drive, but yeah, the pushing, I don't even really know where that came from. It is unusual. It's a rugby scrum. I'm kind of surprised it's allowed. It's ugly to watch, but boy, has it been effective. I mean, the Eagles have been unstoppable with a center, by the way, in Jason Kelce, who's not the biggest guy. He's, by NFL standards, is not considered a big center, but they're just really effective at it. They get good push. They get good push from the offensive line in front of the ball carrier, and they get good push from the running backs and the tight end behind the ball carrier. So it's been a big component of keeping drives alive on 3rd and 4th down. This team will go for it a lot on 4th down. So, the Steelers defense has to be ready to play 4 downs against the Eagles for 60 minutes.
Dave, a lot of us who cover the Steelers and the fans as well, too, were disappointed to see Javon Hargrave fly the coop, a couple of years ago. I mean, he was deserving, of getting that big deal that he got there. And when you look at him now, it's hard to believe. I mean, I'm 53 and it's hard to believe, or 54, and I'm hard to believe that Javon Hargrave's already turning almost 30 here I think next offseason there. His contract, I think it's got voidable years on it. So I think technically it comes to an end after this season. There's in a fantasy realm, we kind of think, well, maybe Javon Hargrave, if he hits the market, maybe that's a guy the Steelers would be interested in bringing back next offseason. Are the Eagles going to even let him get that far in free agency, or do you think he's going to be a priority for them to re-sign?
There's a lot of questions like that with this team. Fletcher Cox, his contract, TJ Edwards, his contract, Kaiser White, his contract, James Bradbury, Hargrave, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So remains to be seen. Very fine player. Now, look, we also know the cap goes way up next year.
Right.
The Eagles kind of a little bit hamstrung, but still made a ton of moves this season. So they're always look. The Eagles generally, if they want to keep you, they will keep you. And I think Hargrave has shown that he's a terrific player, fits into their scheme. And then the other reality is, they drafted Jordan Davis, and they've got, some other young Milton Williams, who's in his 2nd year, and Marlon Tuipulotu, who's in his 2nd year. And so we'll see when it comes down to it, but there's no question that Javon is a huge part of what the Eagles do. Started a little bit slow this year because he had a turf toe, kind of toe injury in the summer, didn't play a lot in training camp, didn't play a lot in the preseason. So it took him a minute to get up to speed, but I talked to him the other day. He's fired up to play the Steelers, and is a big part of it. The Eagles have 5 defensive tackles that they rotate, so they really, depth is a luxury, and they take full advantage of it along that D line, and that's really why they've been so good in the 4th quarter of games for the most part. That D line is always fresh.
I was huge on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming out ahead of that draft and all. And obviously now I think on his 2nd team, describe him in like 2 or 3 words. How would you best describe him?
Fun-loving, athletic, ball hawking. He's been a perfect fit. And the Eagles, part of the reason the Eagles defense is so much better is that, and I loved Rodney McLeod and Anthony Harris, fine man and good player, but they just didn't have the athletic ability of what CJ brings, what Marcus Epps has. Eagles are all over the football. And again, 14 takeaways in 6 games. Big key to the Eagles' 6-0 start.
Well, Dave, it looks like a really, uphill battle for the Steelers this week, especially we'll find out probably today. It's doubtful that T.J. Watt's going to make it back this week, but he is talking to the media, which was a little bit surprising today. But even if he does, end up playing to some degree this weekend, which I doubt he does, it's a very uphill battle. I know because you work for the Eagles website, sometimes we get guys on from the team websites and they're not allowed to make score predictions or anything like that. How do you see this game going? And if available, or if allowed to, what do you see a final score on this?
Yeah, I'd rather not do a score, but I think
Sure.
The Eagles, the question is going to be coming off the bye week, how sharp are you? I mean, I know the Steelers are 2-5. I know they've got a rookie quarterback. I know that they're in a new era, but they're still playing really hard. They had the Dolphins on the ropes and missed some opportunities. So I do think this team very much takes the Steelers seriously. And I think if the Eagles do play that way, this team has a chance to win and play a really good game. And I from a matchup standpoint, I think the Eagles are really difficult to handle with what this team has offensively, with the weapons it has defensively, the pressure that it can put on Pickett. They will account for his mobility. I know the Steelers in the backfield and the wide receivers, terrific group of wide receivers, but with Darius Slay, with James Bradbury, with Avonte Maddox, the Eagles have matched up against everybody. And I think that will be the case again this weekend. So, I think the Eagles will win this football game. And but I know the Steelers are a really feisty, hard, physical team. And I know defensively, they're going to show you some crazy things. So the Eagles have to be prepared for that.
We'll end this last segment here with tell us what's going on at PhiladelphiaEagles.com and man, just the content that you guys
we do
put
a lot
out over there with Fran Duffy and Greg Cosell. Plug yourself here.
Yeah, we do a lot, and we have on game days we invite all Eagles fans to come in. We've got our kickoff show that starts at 12:10. We cover everything through the game, and then we have a post game show after that, live coverage from the stadium as well. And then I do a podcast, an instant reaction podcast that drops just about an hour after the game's over, live from the locker room. It's called Eagles Insider Podcast. So we really do cover it. And we know Eagles fans have responded great. Obviously, Eagles fans are really fired up. Philadelphia sports fans feel like they're the center of the sports universe right now. But Eagles fans recognize what this is. This is a football team that is really good this year. And by the way, has 2 first-round draft picks next year. One of them is the Saints. And then next year has an extra 2024 has an extra 2nd-round pick, courtesy of the Saints. So the future is really promising. The present is extremely bright, and Eagles fans are loving every bit of it.
Well, Dave, look, we're thrilled to have you back on again on the Terrible Podcast, and make sure you follow Dave on Twitter at Eagles Insider. Dave, once again, thanks for joining Alex and myself on the Terrible Podcast.
Thank you, Dave.
Dave, thank you so much. Alex, thank you so much. Have a great weekend and enjoy the game.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Dave Spadero. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Eagles Insider. Let him know you heard him on the podcast. Thank him for his time. The whole Eagles crew do a tremendous job with Fran Duffy and Greg Cosell and Ben Fennell and, of course, Dave himself. They really provide some great content for their readers.
Man, if you are a football student like Alex and I are, and several others are, you might not be a fan of the Eagles for obvious reasons there, but they put out some great content on Twitter and on Philadelphia Eagles as well too. They go deep down into the X's and O's. They do a great job on their podcast as well too, and really is enjoyable.
All right, Dave, let's do our preview of this Eagles game, starting with that Philadelphia offense. And I think the most interesting thing that I noted was, and I talked to Dave about that second quarter offense is the weirdest thing to me. 112 points in the second quarter. I mean, they are among the worst in football in scoring in the first, third, and fourth quarters. But something about that quarter two, that'll probably be my X factor of this game, just because that stat stands out. I mean, they've scored 26 more points in the second quarter than any other team in football. So I'm not sure what it is, but they seem to adjust well after kind of going through their opening script, and they put up points in bunches.
I think my overall takeaway after watching the tape is wow, because a lot of times, I mean, you want to talk about having what looks like maybe a limited kind of playbook, maybe overall. They do so many different things out of just the RPO-based stuff alone. And then you throw in the component with Jalen Hurts. You have to pay that guy so much respect. With your, they're not afraid to leave a free into the man at the end of the line of scrimmage there, because they let Jalen account for him. And if you try to go after the mesh point, in the RPO on the play action fake there, and you commit in that, Jalen will just run around the outside, of you on that there. So that almost takes one guy out of the run game defense at times. And how many times have we seen guys like TJ Watt crash down on the backside and make the play from behind? Well, you have to respect the ability. Here's one thing I was trying to think last night is like, okay, they make their basic RPO look so simple overall, and I kept envisioning why can't the Steelers do something similar to that? And as mobile as Kenny Pickett is, he's not that mobile. The ability to have a guy with extreme mobility like Jalen Hurts makes that RPO offense that much better. And he really is a perfect fit in that offense. The RPO and Dave Spadero spelled it out too. The offensive line, man, when you have that offensive line and the discipline that they have and the kind of players that they have in that, on top of it there, it makes Miles Sanders that much better of a player there. It feels like every play that they run at a minimum gets 5 yards. Now it's obviously not the case there. When you watch them offensively, it doesn't look that elaborate, but they execute very, very well within the RPO system. And I really think that what you try to do is you got to respect the run early. You've got to try to shut down the run. You got to get Jalen Hurts in obvious passing situations, third and 7, things where he's got to throw the football, and then you have to kind of hope that he makes a mistake.
The Eagles' offense plays fast, and they force defenses to play slow because it looks so chaotic to a defense. But the Eagles, obviously, they rep it, they know what's coming, and it's simplified to them so that they can play fast overall. They're not trying to add on too many layers to it, but it's certainly a lot for defense to mess with their eyes and force them to be very disciplined. Very similar to what Miami's did and does as an offense overall. And so, I think their RPO game's really effective. I mean,
their window dressing is beyond any kind of window dressing that they use some orbit motions and the way they use Devontae Smith with going back and forth sometimes in the backfield in motion there. And I think you guys did a great job of pointing out in the scouting report on SteelersDepot.com and you highlighted a couple of games ago about the Steelers defensive line and those late shifts on the defensive line and all. They'll do late shifts with the running back in the backfield, either in shotgun or in pistol type stuff, and it forces the defense to really diagnose 2 seconds before the ball snapped of which side the running back's going to go on, which way the line's likely to go, and they stay, even though I don't view it as overly complex offensively, though. They're ambidextrous on what they can do on both sides of that. Or as who was the basketball player several years? I'm amphibious. he meant to say ambidextrous. But you're going to see this probably, 6 times in this game on Sunday, where both the guard and the tackle on one side of the formation pulls, right. and they'll do that with both guards and tackles in that there. So it's quite frustrating to see that on tape ran so effectively.
And it's a highly athletic offensive line. They don't have one slow guy up front. Kelsey can still move at a high level at his age. Lane Johnson, Mailata wasn't he a rugby player? I mean, I forget his old story, but that guy, Landon Dickerson's a phenomenal athlete. So those guys can move in space in the screen game. They can reach, they can cut off, they can pull, as you mentioned. On early downs, it's pretty rare for them to have one concept. Usually there's multiple options on a play for Hurts to decide and make the right choice. And the goal of those things is to always make the defense wrong. No matter what they do, the offense has a counter, has an answer, has a door number 2 to attack. And Hurts is doing a great job of making decisions, taking care of the football. You can't talk about how well they've done defensively to take away the football and offensively to take care of the football enough. They are plus 12 in turnover differential. Plus 12. The next closest team is plus 6. So they've doubled second place. And they sit at plus 12, turned the ball over just twice all year, 2 interceptions for Jalen Hurts. So generally speaking, to win these games where you're massive underdogs, the way that Pittsburgh is, you got to create splash plays. That generally means turnovers. And so that'll be the mission for Pittsburgh. But trying to get those takeaways is something every defense has tried to do against the Eagles this year, and really no team has been able to do.
How would you rate the overall complexity of what they try to do offensively, though?
Well, I think there's a lot of components, but like I said, they play fast and they offer enough eye candy.
They know who they are, they know what they do, and they do it.
Right, but they offer enough window dressing and eye candy to make defenses play slow. They run good constraint plays, they dress plays up well, they show the same play at a different look, so it's the same to the offense but different to the defense, and that's ultimately what offenses need and try to do, and what in theory Matt Canada was supposed to do, but it really hasn't happened so far. So in terms of the complexity, I don't know exactly where to rank it, but they just have a lot of layers to their offense, and they can play fast within those layers. They know who they are, as you said, and that really makes them an effective and efficient team. The one weakness, though, and you mentioned that, and I wanted to research it, is although they haven't been in these situations a lot because the run game is so strong, on 3rd and 7+, they've converted just 7% of the time. That's 32nd in football. Now, they've only been in 14 of those plays, the fewest in football, so they do well to avoid 3rd and long. But if you can get them there, that obviously takes away some of the RPO game and some of the window dressing and makes them play a bit more conventional.
Right. You have to get him in a situation where he has to make a play with his arm when you know that he has to make a play with his arm.
But how do you get them there? I mean, every offense needs to be in 3rd and 7+. That's always your game plan. And again, they've only been in that situation 14 times this year, the fewest in football. So they do a good job of avoiding situations where they're not going to excel in.
I think at all cost, and it might be at a high cost, is you have to sell out to stop every aspect of the run portion of the RPO. Plain and simple. You cannot let them get 4 or 5 yards on first or second down. On first down specifically, if they're going to get 5 or more yards on first down, it has to be the passing aspect of the RPO. You cannot let the run portion of their RPO beat you, because it's going to make for an even longer day overall there. So I have to go into this game saying they're not going to run against us, and that includes Jalen Hurts on the keeper and all like that. And that's easier said than done. And then treat him like a running back when he does run. But I have to make this guy beat me with his arm on all downs, plain and simple, and hope he makes a mistake in there, or 2 or 3.
What do you think that looks like, though, schematically? I think that would be a lot of 8-man boxes, single high looks. I think a lot of one-gapping, shooting your defensive linemen, try to blow up pullers, try to get penetration.
Linebackers coming downhill and selling out. And I mean, Goddard could end up having 13 catches for 180 yards in this game. But that's the way I make them beat me. That way.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, will we see the mesh charge that Cam Hayward kind of referenced? We're on that mesh point on those zone read plays. There's somebody that attacks the quarterback. He's not reading where the ball's going. He's going after the quarterback every single time to force the give and let Hurts feel it every time they run that zone read to maybe make the OC think about calling that play twice. And so I think you'll kind of see basically the way that they've played the Ravens, generally speaking, and then in some of those games against RG3 in the past against Baltimore, I think will be a similar game plan against Hurts this weekend.
And look, Brown's a great receiver. Devontae's, done some great stuff. But I mean, I've got to see those guys make the plays in this game. I can't see Gaskins and Hurts and running all over, because if they get 6 yards on first down, 5 or 6 yards on first down via the run, then what are they going to do on second? You don't know.
Then you're screwed. Yeah, you're right. But to the point, adding A.J. Brown's been so big for them because now they have bona fide weapons at wide receiver, so they can pass the ball if a team really sells out against the run. They didn't have that last year.
And I try to dare them to push the ball vertically down the field against a lurking safety or something like that. I mean, now look, you can't play man in this, right? Because you turn.
Well, if
back.
you're playing cover one, I mean, you're gonna have to probably play a lot of man. You're gonna play 8-man box. 8-man.
Well,
front.
I mean, I try to. There might be situations, especially in third down situations, third and long situations, if they can get them enough in them that I do that and I make him beat me one-on-one.
I mean, I get your point about playing man against a scrambling quarterback. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying there, but when you're playing single high, it's cover 1, cover 3.
Right.
And
well, if you're going to do it, you got to disguise the living mess out of it and hope that your pressure gets home before he can escape it.
Right. And even one issue with playing zone, I think about the touchdown to Raheem Mostert against Miami last week. That was a zone coverage call. But then once Tua began to break contain on that play, and I watched Cam Sutton at the top. As soon as Tua broke contain, Sutton turned his back to start the plaster. And so generally when you get those scramble situations, guys begin to plaster and they take their eyes off the football anyway. And so you kind of screw yourself even that way. Because I think if Cam Sutton would have saw that ball the whole way through, I don't think Mostert scores. But because Sutton had turned his back to plaster the receiver, never saw the pass to Mostert, and that helped that touchdown happen.
Well, once again, I'd rather come out of this game with a loss with Jalen Hurts having to put the ball in the air a lot more than he normally has in, having his best passing yardage game of the year.
Sure, I agree. What's the most number of attempts he's thrown in a game this year? I'm just curious on what that number is. It's probably not too terribly high. Weirdly not showing up his game log for me for some reason right now. So I don't know what that answer is, but okay. Yeah. PFR is malfunctioning, which is,
it certainly is, isn't it?
Yeah. Don't see. All right. I have his 2022. It looks like, no, this is weird. I don't know. There's something weird going with PFR, but anyway, to your point, I think if you're going to get beat by the pass game. I'm with you.
Right.
All right, flipping over to the defensive side of the football, I think a really strong unit. They're good at every level. Defensive line, linebackers. I think their off-ball linebackers don't get enough credit. For White and Edwards have been really strong for them, as Dave talked about. The secondary, they've added pieces. Do you see any sort of weakness in the secondary, Dave, or in this defense, Dave?
The run defense is probably the weakest aspect of what they do, and even that's not bad on their end there, but I just think overall you got, can you crack the run against them finally? And if you've followed the Steelers obviously throughout this season, the chances of that aren't great there. But I mean, you can't, if you get in these must pass situations with Hargrave, with Cox, with Brandon Graham, and now with Robert Quinn added to that. I mean, and even Hassan Reddick, I think he leads them in sacks. Can get after the quarterback in here. So, something I think you got to do things that we haven't seen, and that's a lot of the some quick game in the passing game with situations that put your wide receivers the ability to run after the catch.
To your point, the run defense numbers don't look great overall. They're allowing 5.0 yards per carry. That's one of the lower marks in football. I'm not really quite sure why that is for a team that's 6-0, but I think what they do is they run a lot of five down fronts, a lot of 5-1, 5-2 looking fronts. And if you can get past that first level, which is difficult, but if you can do that, I think it opens up that second level being a bit freer. They present a lot of light boxes pre-snap, and then they rotate guys down late to try to muddy up those waters. So the RPO game might be tougher to run because of all the late rotation and shifts that the Eagles do. But I think if you can get into that second level against those 5-man fronts, this run game could find some traction.
How are they in explosive plays?
They aren't allowing a lot on the ground. Let me pull up the numbers here in terms of.
I'm not counting on the Steelers having any on the ground.
Well, they're getting a lot through the air. Not really.
How are they against explosive plays against a pass? I guess
they've allowed only 9 completions of 20+ yards. That's the best mark, the lowest mark in football. In just 2 of 40+, that's tied 4th best / lowest in the NFL. So they keep a lid on things.
Yeah, they do. So, I mean, if you can't run against them and you can't throw deep and you can't, I mean, I don't know what you do against them offensively, to be quite honest with what we've seen so far. We have to see stuff that we haven't seen yet this season.
I would say that the most crucial part, and it's an obvious one, is just identify what coverage you might be getting, because there are so many late shifts and safety rotations. It's a veteran secondary, either guys that have played in the NFL for a long time or guys who've been with the team for quite some time. I go back to the linebackers and where they're aligned, and Mike Sullivan has what's called boss versus bode. And so those rules basically tell you if the linebackers are shifted to the tight end and you're getting a zone look, that probably means there's somebody rotating down to where the linebackers aren't, away from the linebackers, or vice versa. So trying to identify boss versus bode rules and where that rotation may happen is going to be really critical for Kenny Pickett. Again, Miami did a lot of post-snap rotation, a lot of disguising. I imagine the Eagles will do similar, if not more, this weekend.
Is beating them with their own medicine, an option if you can execute it, meaning, a lot of RPOs?
Again, I think because of their rotation, it's probably tougher to do. I think they disguise things generally pretty well. So, I mean, that can be a component of it potentially, but that's not been a big part of Pittsburgh's personality, and you're on the road and it's loud. I'm worried about some miscommunication on either a quarterback or receiver in this game.
I mean, you become, once again, as has been the case, you become highly reliant on somebody making a play for 60 yards for a touchdown, it seems like, or you're getting a turnover and creating a short field situation and your defense just keeping the score down overall. I wanted to bring up something on that RPO shovel, if you will, in that game against the Dolphins there. Did you see what I was getting? The point I was trying to make I was not criticizing Pickens on that play. I'm just, my thought was, why wouldn't you have a built-in slant to Pickens on that, or go back to something similar to that, because if you hit Pickens on that, he's running, right? Am I wrong?
Well, I knew that you weren't criticizing Pickens. I don't know how people took it that way, but it's the internet, so I understand people take it always the wrong way. But in terms of the action of that play, because the shovel's going away and it's more of that
there's only really
pass.
2 options on that play. I get that. The option is to hand it to the back or the shovel.
Yeah, I mean, they've added a third component to throw to the shovel side on a curl or an out route or something like that. So that's really the only downfield option. You're also worried about if you throw that slant, that might take some time to find that, and you're worried about the illegal man downfield penalty. Pittsburgh's still very good at getting called for.
But I mean, if you read it quick enough, to me, that should be built into that, I would think, on the backside.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but there's a front side to the shovel side pass play, usually a route built in, and usually that play has other components to it. So I don't expect that being added to.
I mean, there was nothing else.
Arsenal.
There was nothing else, and even I don't think they ran routes on the other side, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know if they did they've done it before earlier this year. I don't think they did it on that particular play, but they've had some other options.
But nothing else is working. Why wouldn't you add it? So it just. Yeah,
I mean, I get it. It's harder to do that because you're kind of rolling away from that on that play, unless you're saying like throw it immediately. Don't even
that's my thought.
Action.
That's my thought. Was it would have had to been all in one motion there,
Yeah, I mean, on the snap of the football, throw that quick slant. I mean, I think Tua did that last week. He had a quick slant to Tyreek, I think, on a kind of weird looking play. So
just building off of what you already have there is what I'm trying to state overall.
Yeah, I get that. That's fair.
But people took it as me criticizing Pickens. I wasn't criticizing Pickens on that. I didn't, you need 500 characters on
to explain. I know, I hate that. I now qualify everything to try to over explain myself so people don't yell at me, and of course they still yell at me.
Right.
That was my welcome to Twitter during the wedding last week. I had my first tweet. People were like, "Alex, you're back. That's great. Oh, we're so glad." And then I tweeted something 2 minutes later. It's like, "Alex, you suck. You're an idiot." And it was like, I should never tweet. So that's the goal. All right. Anything else with Eagles defense? It's a very good unit overall. The pass rush, they're so deep. It reminds me of the Bengals defense in their prime where they would rotate in fresh bodies. They got 7-8 guys that play a third of the snaps. Of course, you had Robert Quinn to that mix. So you got Sweat, Reddick, Quinn, the veteran still there. Brandon Graham, still 34 years old, kicking butt. Good defensive line. Fletcher Cox, Hargrave, Milton Williams was a guy Pittsburgh liked coming out of Louisiana Tech. So it's a really deep group. And I don't think that gets appreciated enough because they always have fresh legs in the game against an offensive line that obviously never comes off the field. So that is just a tough battle to win when you're constantly facing athletic, fresh-legged, talented players like the Eagles have.
And it goes, it might not technically be one of the better secondaries, overall, but the rushing coverage works hand in hand enough that it prevents the explosive plays, and they do a good enough job of keeping with their front of keeping opposing offenses off schedule there that they have their situations where they can pin their ears back.
Yeah, they're top 7 in pressure rate and they're 20-something in blitz rate. And that means they're getting home with 4. They don't have to bring a lot of people and get super creative. And that's ideally where you want to be as a defense, where Pittsburgh had been over the past years before 2022. And that secondary has talent. Darius Slay, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, great addition for them. So I still feel like there's some good guys back there.
But that Kaiser White, he was just regarded as kind of a cast-off, wasn't he?
Yeah, I liked him coming out. He was a safety, then he moved to linebacker. I thought he was a good player with the Chargers, and TJ Edwards gets no love, but he leads that team far and away, and sacks never comes off the field, 96% of the snaps this year. So TJ Edwards, probably one of the more underrated players in football. Because
of the way, and I should have mentioned this with when we're talking about the Eagles offense, with James Pierre being so long and so physical, and you're almost daring them to kind of pick on him through the air down the field, but because of his physicality and the way he probably can help you in the run, do you play him more this week?
That's a good question. I wonder how they're going to do this rotation with Witherspoon presumably coming back but missing some time. And while his tackling and run defense has improved, it's not ideal. It's kind of a knife to a gunfight that is this Eagles running attack, Witherspoon is. So I wonder how they're going to rotate this thing.
If I see Witherspoon on the field, and as we have made sure to give him credit several times early before he went down injured, was the fact that he has shown up more with the physicality of taking on blocks on the edge and turning stuff. But if I see him out on the field, I can't wait to get a lineman or a tight end out on him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right about that. I don't know how they're going to play that overall, just from an overall readiness standpoint. Witherspoon, of course, was not playing particularly well before he got hurt. So I could see some sort of rotation there every other series, or I don't know if it's a third down thing or what they're going to do. I mean, I think Witherspoon, Sutton may still start. Wallace won't play in this game where it doesn't appear. The other tough thing, just one last random thought, because the Eagles pull their guys so much, it's so tough for these DBs because you can't cut anymore. You got to stay on your feet. And I understand that. And I'm not mad at the rule change, but these DBs don't have much of a choice because they just got to take on the freight train coming their way. They can't
go
do anything.
For a ride.
They just got to deal with Lane Johnson or Mayotta pulling, and they can't go low. You just got to stay on your feet and try to not get knocked off your feet.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be real. It's going to be real tough to stop that, stop the run aspect of that offense. But to me, that's you got to sell out and do that defensively to keep the score down. And you just look, I mean, Hurts has made a couple of mistakes. He just hasn't paid for them,
I will say they're not great situational football defensively. They are 29th in third down defense, 19th in red zone defense. So you got to win those weighty moments that Mike Tomlin loves to talk about.
And I think on the other side, red zone with I think there's something like 60% in the red zone.
I can pull up the numbers here. They are 64% in red zone offense. That's 6th in football, and 44% on third down. That is also 6th in football. So they're very good situationally offensively, which is expected for one of the better offenses in football.
And I dare say that they're not many. Their third down situations aren't are very manageable where you're guessing run or pass. I wonder what they are in like 3rd and 7. Did you already rattle that off or no?
3rd and 7 plus or 3rd and 7 and closer?
3rd and 7 and longer. What are they?
They're the worst team in football.
Okay,
7% conversion rate, but they've only been in those situations 14 times. That's a league low. So they do not put themselves in 3rd and long because their run game is so strong.
Well, just score a lot of points and get them in a situation where they have to throw a lot, right?
Yeah, and that's what Pittsburgh can do. Their offense is humming. The last thing on the Eagles' offense, that quarterback sneak I mentioned, against Arizona, they ran a quarterback sneak 4 straight times on the goal line. So they will just do it and do it and do it again. And they use that pusher, and they had that weird victory formation. Did you see that on tape, that victory formation?
Yeah, I did. And I also saw the other clip where Kelsey tells them it's coming.
Yeah, right. They tell you that's the Eagles offense. You know what's coming. You can't stop it. And that's the mark of a good team overall. So in those short yard situations, 3rd and goal line, even 4th down, they're going to be aggressive. They're going to push Hurts over the pile. They got a good line, and Hurts is a strong guy to get that extra yard. Not
that we needed confirmation or anything, but I mean, you look at a team like them, and it's really it's the main thing that Spadero started off with when we talked to their offensive line. I mean, the Steelers have got to address their offensive line. They have, especially with a young quarterback and a young running back and all, the Steelers have got to address their offensive line.
Yeah, as Dave said, Andy Weidel, a trench guy, and I think you're going to see Pittsburgh address that. One last thought. I don't know too much about the guy, but if you think about just very early, very loosely potential future OC of the Pittsburgh Steelers, how about Brian Johnson, the Eagles quarterback coach? I think would make a lot of sense. Will be, I think, a pretty hot name this summer or this.
Yeah, I really haven't given it much thought. I mean, other than obviously just watching a lot of tape of theirs and all. I mean, what can he do outside of RPO? Would kind of be my first question, I guess.
Yeah, I just think overall the work he's done with Jalen Hurts to develop his game, I think it's been really impressive overall. To let him play fast and aggressive, but also take great care of the football. I don't know. I just know that's a name that you're going to hear in connection for a lot of big jobs this offseason.
And I guess with the connection to Weidel being there, right?
Yeah,
how long has he been on that staff?
Just since last year, actually.
OC. Okay. So there's
this is their quarterback's coach, not even their OC, because I imagine whoever their
quarterback's coach.
Yeah. Pretty young guy. He's 35 years old.
Okay. I mean, open to anything, open to turning over any stones.
Yep. Anyway, so that's the Eagles, of course, a very talented team. Pittsburgh's going to win. They got to get splash plays, offensively, special teams, defensively, creating turnovers, pretty standard stuff to pull off big upsets. So I think that covers things pretty well. Before we get to our Week 8 picks, including picking this Steelers-Eagles game, let's hear from our friends over at MyBookie, and I am 1-0 on the week after picking the Ravens last night.
And I am 0-1. I thought maybe we'd see a little bit different. Boy, Tom Brady looked that whole offense of theirs. Several weeks ago, you're talking about Byron Leftwich, and Byron Leftwich is a guy maybe you need to consider teams taking a serious look at for the next stage, a head coach and all like that. The way that offense of theirs has looked it really does. It feels like it diminished, or it does diminish what the Steelers being able to beat the Buccaneers a few weeks ago for what Tampa has done. They have seemed so out of sync and not on the same page with that offense of theirs for the last, 3 weeks, right? 3 games in total there. And it really showed up. Tom Brady missing throws and just seems like miscommunication. Anyway, I thought maybe we'd see a Buccaneers team come out and make more of a statement there, but they didn't. And even though the Ravens lost, they lost everybody and their brother in that game. It seemed like all the guys that were questionable that came into that game, I think ended up leaving that game. And I thought maybe after Mark Andrews left early, that would go into the Buccaneers' favor. But they figured out how to run downhill, and Tampa just looked like they didn't have any want to try to tackle in that game, especially in the second half. And the Ravens just literally ran away with the game, if you will. Let's see here. You know sports and you pick winners all the time. So why not get paid for them at MyBookie? MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests for all your sports betting needs, anytime, anywhere. You can bet on the NFL, NBA, NHL, or aim for a low-risk, high-reward jackpot with the all-new MyBookie Money Bag feature. Money Bag is a one-of-a-kind opportunity to spin for crazy odds on props and futures. Place your bet, spin the wheel, and get ready to score epic odds on the best teams, athletes, and events out there. You can find that by going to mybookie.ag. Sign up free today and use our promo code TERRIBLE. That's terrible at sign up, and claim a deposit match of any amount up to $1,000. Again, that's promo code TERRIBLE to claim your bonus. And if you deposit between now and Halloween, you'll also grab 31 free spins in the MyBookie casino on top of it there. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere, and make sure you get in between now and Halloween. You also grab 31 free spins on the MyBookie casino, our friends at mybookie.ag.
All right, Dave, let's make our picks here for week number 8.
All right, do we have to? Yeah. Let's see here. Let me pull up this sheet of games here. Denver Broncos. This one's overseas, I believe. Denver Broncos at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think Russell Wilson's going to be back for this one here. All that said, the Jaguars are laying 2.5 at their home away from home overseas.
Right. Basically just move the team to London. They play there enough. And you just mentioned Byron Leftwich. He's supposed to be the Jaguars head coach right now. He's supposed to have that job, and got an issue with Balky and turned it down. He probably regretting that right now.
They're all right. They want to fire him now.
I know. Yeah. I mean, you got to strike when the iron's hot, I think, when you're a coach. But anyway, give me Jacksonville. I think it's not been it's still trying to come together as a 2-5 team, but that Denver offense just way in over their head.
I would agree. I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think they win it by a field goal on this one, so I'll take the Jaguars lay the 2.5. Chicago Bears at the Dallas Cowboys. Saw a little bit of life out of the Bears the other night there, but Cowboys, I don't know if they're going to have Ezekiel Elliott back. It doesn't sound like there's a good chance he's going to play in this one, but Dallas still laying 9.5 at home against the Bears.
A pretty big line. It was good for Chicago to get Fields running the ball more and actually utilize his legs. You wonder if teams will adjust to that some. Tony Pollard, a very strong, 1B guy to replace Zeke if he does not play. That line just feels a little too big. Cowboys win, but Bears cover.
I'll take the Cowboys. I'll lay the 9.5 in this one. The Raiders in the Big Easy against the New Orleans Saints. Raiders on the road laying 1.5 in this one. Against Andy
Dalton, right? A lot of injuries there for the Saints. Give me the Raiders.
Give me the Raiders late at 1.5 on the road. Carolina, the winner of this game, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy. They're going to be NFC South leaders.
Will be leading the NFC South. Falcons at home laying 4 against the Panthers.
The tanking Panthers could put themselves in the first place. It's just the wildest thing. I know PJ Walker played well. I think Atlanta's done a decent job this year, even with some of the injuries. Give me Atlanta.
Man, I'm holding your hand all the way through this. Give me Atlanta late of 4 points here. Miami Dolphins on the road against the Detroit Lions. Miami favored by 3.5 on the road against Detroit.
Yeah, that Lions defense has just struggled so much this year. We saw what Miami's offense could do, even though it got quieter in the second half. I got to go with the Dolphins in this one.
I'm going right along with you, lockstep here. Miami laid a 3.5 here. Arizona Cardinals on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings favored by 4 at home against the Cardinals. New daddy JJ Watt. Give that kid a contract already.
It will be a Steeler, I'm sure, in 2040 something. The new Call of Duty just came out, which is a bad sign if you're a Cardinals fan and Kyler Murray. So I'm going Minnesota just based off of Modern Warfare 2 alone.
Oh, Lord, that's some high-level analysis.
You haven't followed the joke?
No.
No, Kyler Murray's a big Call of Duty player, and there's a joke that whenever like the new Call of Duty comes out, the Cardinals lose.
Okay, so he won't be deep into the playbook this week.
Exactly.
What you're trying to say.
Exactly.
I'll buck the trend here. Give me the Cardinals +4. Patriots on the road against the Jets. Jets. I guess Mac Jones is going to be back at quarterback this week. The Patriots on the road favored by 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy to see them get really handled by the Bears last week, but the Jets offense, Zach Wilson, has still been pretty messy as well. No Corey Davis, of course, no Breece Hall in this one. They trade for James Robinson. I can't see Belichick losing 2 in a row like that, so give me the Patriots.
I think the Patriots win, but maybe by 1. So I'll take the 2.5 points with the Jets here. Tennessee Titans on the road against the Houston Texans. The Titans on the road favored by 2.5. Alex?
Yeah, give me Tennessee. I've tried to go with Houston, and the offense has not been crisp. They're looking to sell some pieces. Give me the Titans.
I'll take the Texans in an upset outright, so I want those 2.5 points. New York Giants against the Seattle Seahawks. This might end up being a pretty decent game here. Seahawks, Geno Smith is playing out of his mind. Seahawks laying 3 at home against the G-Men.
Who would have thought that by week 8, one of the best games of the week would be Giants Seahawks?
Not me.
Crazy season. Kenneth Walker's been fantastic for them, filling in for some of the running back injuries. This one's tough because the Giants have just found ways to win, and Dable's doing a tremendous job. But I just feel like Seattle has more talent. DK Metcalf, how serious is that injury that Metcalf suffered?
I think he's kind of questionable, isn't he?
I have no idea. I just know he got carted off last week. Is this in Seattle or in?
Yeah, in Seattle.
All right, give me the Seahawks.
Yeah, because it's in Seattle, I'm taking them this way too. I'll lay the 3 with Seattle. Commanders at the Colts. The Colts got a new quarterback, bench Matt Ryan, playing the Commanders. Colts favored by 3 in this one.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Matt Ryan versus Carson Wentz. Now it's Sam Ellinger versus Taylor Heineke. So just crazy quarterback season. I mean, Heineke's done well as a starter. I'm not, sure what the secret is, but give me the Commanders.
I'm going to take the Commanders plus. I think they win this outright. I'll make this even my stone cold lead pipe of the century of the year of the week here. Commanders +3. 49ers on the road against the Rams. You want to talk about an offense that's really struggling. The Rams are 49ers on the road favored by 1.5.
Yeah, I'm sure McCaffrey will have a much bigger impact on the offense. He played 20% of the snaps in his debut. Give me the 49ers.
I think McVay has them up for this game enough to get it done here. I'll take the Rams in the upset, so I'll take the 1.5 in this one. Green Bay Packers on the road against the Buffalo Bills. Aaron Rodgers +11 on the road against the Bills.
Has he ever been an underdog like that before to that degree? It's just the Packers have been so frustrating. I want to believe in them, but I can't get there, so give me Buffalo.
Yeah, I think Buffalo runs them out of this place. Buffalo in Buffalo coming off a bye too.
I believe yes, they are.
Give me Buffalo, lady 11 in this one. Cincinnati Bengals on the road against the Cleveland Browns. The Bengals have lost. It sounds like they're going to lose Jamar Chase for a little bit here. All that said, the Bengals on the road laying 3.5 against the Brownies.
Yeah, give me the Bengals in this one. They'll find a way to overcome without Chase, but it sounds like, not official, but it sounds like Chase will miss that Week 11 game against the Steelers. No guarantee, but if he goes on IR, then he'll definitely miss it. So that's something to watch for Steelers fans.
I'll take the Bengals later 3.5 as well in that game. I'm a Tyler Boyd owner and been enjoying that this year. I think that's all of the games except for the Steelers and the Eagles. We'll circle back to that now. Eagles right now, 10.5-point favorites at home over the Steelers.
These lines have just been depressing this year. Just 10-point dogs, 11-point dogs. It's been tough. Again, talked up the Eagles quite a bit and with good reason. I know back in 2004, it was the undefeated Eagles and Pittsburgh knocked them off, but I wish that 2022 Steelers were even close to the 2004 Pittsburgh Steelers team. Don't see it happening. Eagles, too much firepower. Offense, just too multiple, and Pittsburgh's offense just among the worst in football. I got Eagles winning this one, Dave, 27-14.
I tried to come up with every way imaginable to talk myself into ways of maybe the Steelers could win this, and all I came up with was just trend busters.
What does it even mean? Just
statistical bust the trends, because the Steelers are 0-9 in Philadelphia in their last 9 games. There. Couple other another aspect that I thought would be cute would be Kenny Pickett kind of going back home, if you will, because he's from the New Jersey area and grew up an Eagles fan and entering that storyline into it, and there was nothing that on tape in the end that would allow me to think that they could pull off this upset. I do, however, think it will be a closer game. I think somehow, some way, the Steelers defense at least keeps it down to some degree here, and I think maybe their offense gets a late touchdown in this, maybe 10 late garbage points. Anyway, I have written down here 24-19. So I have this a 5-point game. Maybe the Eagles get bored playing with their food or something like that, aspect of it. But I think my calculations are maybe the Steelers be able to keep them down on the scoreboard here. So I have it 24-19. Obviously. And what was your score there?
27-14. So I don't have Pittsburgh covering. You have the Steelers covering.
All right. So one of us will be right and one of us will be wrong here. All right. That's got the picks.
All right, Dave, let's get to reader emails and close out today's show.
Let's see. How far along are we into this now?
Getting near 2 hours. So shorter, the better.
All right, let me pull up these email machine real quick here. Bryce writes in, Eagles game. Hey, guys, I'm pushing my chips into the middle of the table and going all in. The Steelers are going to pull off another upset of the year victory. He says some thoughts. Okay, so a guy like JPP ended up playing 50 snaps for Baltimore last night. Other than the financial aspect of things, I can't for the life of me understand why the Steelers didn't make it a top priority to get a guy like that once TJ went down. We had a big need for third outside linebacker, and JPP would have been a nice fit at that backup spot. Why do you believe the Steelers ultimately didn't make that move for JPP? Number 2, give me my flowers because I was all in on us drafting Jalen Hurts. Just needed to say that. Now with that out of the way, based on what you've seen on tape, who's the weak link on the Eagles offensive line that the Steelers tried to game and exploit? Man, I don't know. Lane Johnson with a TJ Watt. If you can get that matchup, there ain't much weakness on that Eagles offensive line.
I believe he's still starting one of their guards, Isaac Sumalia. I can't pronounce the name.
He's still been pretty good, though.
No, they've all been good. Yeah, there really isn't the fish of the week, as Carl Dunbar says, the real weak link to go after. Give her your flowers. Good call on Jalen Hurts. In
that offense specifically. He wants to know why the Steelers didn't go after JPP.
It's a good question. I don't know for sure. I mean, I don't like getting hyper specific on why they didn't go after X, but I think it's fair to say, why did they not do better to bolster their depth? I mean, they traded for Malik Reed. They understood some lack of depth there, but Malik Reed, obviously not the answer. And again, no one was going to replace TJ Watt 1-to-1, but I think Pittsburgh, since trading away Melvin Ingram, they've had backup linebackers of Derek Tuska, Taco Charlton, Malik Reed. It's not been good enough, and I think they really have to spend a higher than expected draft pick to get a really strong number 3 edge rusher next year. I'm talking probably a 3rd-round type pick.
Rick Benz writes in, you guys do a great job breaking down plays and film. Would you be allowed to do it on YouTube in a voiced format? Rick, I don't know if you noticed, but Alex does a lot of YouTube videos of breaking down stuff, 1 or 2 a week generally. And he says, I'd love to see a short breakdown of things the next opponent does well or poorly and how it can be countered. Rick, get to SteelersDepot.com. You've been missing out, brother. Every week for I don't know how long, these guys break down the offensive and defensive side of the football. Very detailed, long post and a lot of visuals in there with film to back it up. So, we do really have a matchup show because not only do we break it down in these podcasts, and Alex does the videos, but man, I that's the first thing I do when I get up on Friday morning is read the offensive and defensive scouting reports that Alex and the guys put up. So I don't know what else to tell you. He also says, and who has the dog? You or Alex? I hear it shaking its head every now and then and rattling its tags. I mean, I've got a dog, but he spends a lot of time downstairs with his. Maybe he caught one time when Hammy was upstairs here and shaking his head or whatnot. But you don't have a dog running around at your place, do you, Alex?
Nope, no pets. Just that dog in me, as the kids like to say. Just being dumb.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
maybe it is the dog in Alex there.
But just real quick, just to brag on, I think Josh and Jonathan, I think our scouting reports on the opposition. I know they're not incredible. The most read articles, but they're for the hardcore football fan. They're really good for me just to better talk about the opponent, because I probably wouldn't dive into their tape as deeply as I do otherwise. But I don't think really you will find other places, other sites to break down opponents the way that we do.
Right, because and you guys split it up as well too. So, and I know you guys don't get together in it, so it ahead of time. So it's interesting to see the two pieces get submitted, and the different aspects that are added to that.
Yeah, we have a focus on. I do the schematics, and then Josh and Jonathan do the individual play to try to give you all kinds of layers.
Let's see. Dave in Chicago, when Sullivan takes over for Canada and the offense continues to avoid the middle of the field and keep throwing short into the boundaries, you will finally start to realize that this is Mike Tomlin's offense. He tries to tell us every time he speaks, talking about only about eliminating negativity, avoiding mistakes, possessing the ball. Heck, when asked what he likes about the Eagles offense and Hurts, he said the exact same things, not mentioning their splash plays and scoring proficiency. To Coach T, offense is all about living in your fears. This goes back over 2 coordinators and 5 quarterbacks. Now, I'm not going to change. It's not going to change until they bring in outside guy to run the offense without Tomlin smothering it like a wet blanket. I mean, it's a fair enough. I mean, until we see something different. I mean, it's a fair enough point. I guess overall. An aging Ben, and obviously the injuries to Ben, and now rookie quarterback, and the whole Duck and Mason and Mitch Trubisky thing and all like that. And I've said it a few times, an offensive game plan should not be relying on your defense to put the offense in great positions or score points in lieu of them there. So we can't continue it. They cannot continue what they're doing now, even as Kenny Pickett gets more experienced, without better personnel on that offensive line, and B, without a identity on offense, whatever that identity. Are you going to be a team that throws the football 40 times a game, and you're going to run bunches and switch routes and high level combinations? Or are you going to be a team that, heavy RPOs, which probably not going to, be a Jalen Hurts type situation there? Or are you going to be a team that runs the football? I mean, they have no identity here. Right. And when you look at the film, it's just, and it's been that way for 3-4 seasons now. It's very unappetizing.
Right. There is some talent individually, but there really is no cohesive plan and vision. And as you said, no identity for an offense. And that's the most important thing an offense needs to have is to know who they are, how they win, and to execute that plan. I will say, though, I mean, I understand the conservative nature of the offense, and, you got to take care of the football. That's always the most important thing. But as you said, they're second in deep pass attempts? What's the number that you gave? So let's not say that they're that conservative. Right. They're not hitting them, but I mean, I'm sure, I don't know exactly what the Twitter reaction was last week, but I'm betting people were pretty upset about that 3rd and 3 double move to Deontay that fell incomplete. People were probably like, why this team pass deep? And the interception to Claypool probably got a lot of criticism as well for throwing deep there, but I thought those were good looks and good calls to throw deep on. So this team has taken shots. They've just been really ineffective at hitting them. And I think that's important to note. But again, this offense in general has been horrible, and there's no defending that. To the last point of bringing an outsider, if Tomlin is truly pulling all the strings here, then it doesn't matter if you bring in an outsider or an insider, whatever. If Tomlin's truly doing all that, he would just, morph the offense into his vision. So if that's the theory, an outsider to me would not be the solution.
And look, I know it's easy and a sexy thing to say off the cuff. Well, this offense has no identity, and you hear that. You've heard that for for years, you know. But I mean, literally, this offense has no identity right now.
And the players admit that. Chase Claypool said that earlier this year. He said we don't have an identity, and that much is obvious.
TJ and the rest of the season from Brian here. If the Steelers lose to the Eagles and if the Ravens and the Bengals each win, this season will almost certainly feel lost. Is there any chance the Steelers don't bring TJ back at all this year? No, he's coming back. I know he'd want to play, but is there a reason to risk re-injury or add those miles to his body? I know that would be waving a white flag, and TJ certainly wouldn't want that, but could that be more valuable long-term? You guys are the best. Thanks so much. Brian, look, it's just a matter of when TJ's going to play, and it's going to be interesting to hear TJ talk later on today, but TJ's playing. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, he will. He's a competitor. He's healthy. Go out there and play him. And again, assuming there's no medical limitation that would risk further health, which I don't get the sense that's the case, I'm playing him Sunday against Eagles. If that's 20, 30 snaps, you're in do or die. Again, I understand the odds of Pittsburgh winning this game are low, but if you do win this game, hypothetically, for whatever reason, however you do it, you're 3-5. To me, that was always the goal, was to get to 3-5 by the bye, and then you may have a chance in a not so great overall AFC North. And yeah, not a great, a quote unquote easier schedule the second half of the year. So if you do that, that's an opportunity, and you got to have all hands on deck. I'm playing 90 as much as I can play him, assuming again he's medically cleared.
Look, if you can somehow manage to miracle to get a win and go into your bye week, and we didn't even mention what's going to happen with Casey this week. It doesn't, I guess you could carve out a path for him on the roster. I mean, if healthy enough.
Potentially, depends on his conditioning.
He would help.
Probably.
He would help potentially in this game.
Yeah, I could see that. All hands on deck to me at this point. You don't have anything to lose. And again, I know we played a doom and gloom game, but we did that against Tampa Bay. And to the Steelers and Tomlin's credit, when their backs were against the wall, they seem to come out and fight, and they're going to face a similar offense in the Eagles as they did against Miami. So maybe that helps them prepare and adjust, and they contain Tua after the first quarter of Sunday night's game. So I don't want to say there's no chance, because Pittsburgh is at their best when no one gives them a chance, and no one is really giving them a chance this weekend.
All right. Well, I think we got all the emails out of the way here, Alex. Anything else to add as we ride off into this Friday?
Nope. We'll come back Monday, Dave and I, on Halloween. I guess that'll be Monday, and hopefully there'll be more treats than tricks to talk about.
There you go. Nice segue there. So in the meantime, thanks to Dave Spadero for coming in on the podcast today. Hey, get on there. Eagles at Eagles Insider. Is it Inside or Insiders?
It is the Eagles Insider podcast.
Right, but the Twitter feed is
Insider, singular.
Okay, singular. Eagles Insider. Get on there. Let Dave know you heard him on the Terrible Podcast, and thank him for his time there. And get over to PhiladelphiaEagles.com. They got some great analysis for this game as well, too. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, The Terrible Podcast, at gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar for $25. You can have an ad-free version of the site from the time that you sign up there. Alex, I love talking football with you, brother. We'll do it again on Monday. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.